Hello, my name is Kate. I am a wedding and portrait photographer, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how you can improve taking photographs in natural light. There are so many elements into this, from your settings to what the light's doing, the direction, the reflections, all of this can all have such a huge impact on if you can get a great shot from it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my tricks and what I do and how it works. The most common lighting situations during the daytime is diffused light. So you're going to get diffused light if there's clouds, if you're undercover somewhere, if you're under trees, and you can get the sun popping through and it can just be so magical, even if it's not an evening shoot where you've got that golden hour, but you can create that with trees and such like that. So in these situations, the sun is not hitting your subject directly at all. It can be behind them, it can be behind a tree, behind a building, behind a building, all these things. It's a way of getting natural light without that harshness of bright sunlight. Sometimes we don't have control as to if we're going to photograph at that perfect golden hour. Sometimes it has to be during the day, and that's perfectly fine. So as long as you find that shade so that you take that harshness off their skin, that's what you're looking for. When I first really pushed my photography, I had 2 little kids at home and my husband could not handle having a baby and a toddler to put to bed. It was an absolute nightmare. It wasn't even worth the stress and the pressures. So I was always photographing my clients in the middle of the day, and I told them it was to work around their kids' naps. So it worked out really well on my behalf, but I was photographing in bright sunlight and it worked out really well because I was mastering bright, harsh light, shadows and such like that, because you can work it to be complementary, but I wasn't finding shade. I wasn't finding diffused light. I didn't really understand it at that point, that how much of an impact that light can have on a photo and if it's actually going to look good or not. So I was photographing harsh light. I was just trying to keep the light consistent across their faces, not to overexpose and blow out those highlights. And it worked. And you know what? Practicing in that actually made me better today, because when you're a wedding photographer, you're photographing in this harsh, bright sunlight. And it allowed me to be able to be like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. That was my thing. That's what I first mastered, because it was like the worst light possible and the toughest settings possible, but it worked. So then I started gradually working towards, okay, well, this harsh light is pretty intense. So you find that diffused light, shadows, shade is every photographer's best friend. And it doesn't bother me if there isn't shade anymore. And if the better location and the better scenery is out in the bright sunshine, it's fine. We work to our strengths, we work to our weaknesses. It's super important though that we challenge ourselves to work in those situations that we are not familiar with, not comfortable with. One huge bonus about photographing in diffused light versus bright sunlight is it allows there's no shadows. You're going to limit the shadows. You're going to limit those highlights and the low lights that can be very harsh with the sunlight. And also it allows your colors to be just a little bit more vibrant and enhanced and just calmer, a little bit more complementary to skin tones, to angles in the faces and such like that. Cloudy situation is what you're facing for your current photo shoot, then even if it is overcast, you still need to find that direction of the light. So you can still get really hard shadows across faces and that contrast. But if you want to be able to have your subject directly towards the general light source, and then you're going to want to bring up your warm balance. Then you're going to want to bring out your white balance to be able to bring in that smoother, calmer skin tone. So by having your diffused light source sort of shining onto your client, you're going to reduce the shadows on the face. It's going to be a softer light. It's going to really enhance their features. You're going to get a little bit more brightness in their eyes, and that can all really bring in a portrait. The next lighting situation that you're going to come across is bright, harsh sunlight. Like I said, master what you're uncomfortable with, enhance it, have your weakness be your strength. It really is worth it. But it's really interesting what you can do with your sunlight. You can either have your subject turned away from the sun so that all of their face is in shadow. That will just give that consistency across their face, opposed to this harsh contrast of like highlights and shadows. Though, if you want a little bit more of an editorial type look, you can turn them so that they're sort of angular to the sun. So you do have some harsh highlights and low light, so it gives that contrast, which is kind of fun. And also playing with shadows, you can have their hands up, you can have shadows from other things around them, sources that are in the area, creating shadows across them, whether it's leaves and petals and stairgates, whatever it might be. Having this creativity brought on from that harsh sunlight, use it, adapt to it, bring it into your photos and have that be a part of that story that you're telling with it, whatever gallery that you're trying to capture. And the last time of the day to photograph is every photographer's dream, is golden hour. You can get this golden hour whether it's sunrise or sunset. Most people will do sunset because who actually wants to get up at that time in the morning? Because I've done it before and it was... So golden hour is so magical in so many different ways. You can have that stunning golden soft glow that just enhances every single photograph. You dial in your settings, it's so romantic, especially if you want to capture an engagement session, a couple session, family session, whatever it might be. It's so lovely. When you get there a little early, you can photograph it with the sun just sort of illuminating the entire space. And then you can get a little bit more of the backlight. You can have it peeking through their face. You got your faces sort of close here and you can have it peeking through, which is so absolutely stunning. If you just capture that, you're gonna look like this as you're trying to get the right angle. And that's okay. It's worth it. It's always worth it for the right shot. You can have it just kind of glowing behind their head. So it's just they look like they're glowing, which is super cool. And then you can get some distance from your couple. For whoever it is you're photographing, you can get some distance from them and you can get the overall just the magical evening for it. And then when it starts turning into that blue eye, you can turn around and then you've got that more soft evening light directly on their faces, and it can be absolutely the most complimentary light. No one has a blemish. Okay, it's that ultimate airbrushed natural look that just you glow. You can work with these different lighting situations based on your vibe, what you're going for, who you're capturing, what you're capturing, why you're capturing it. You can do sunrise, which is absolutely amazing, especially if you're photographing in a city and no one wants all those people looky-loos all in behind you. Though that morning is absolutely worth getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's freezing cold. And then you can have your diffuse light during the day. Depending on your location, you can have your light diffused by a building or by trees or an overhang, whatever it might be. You've got your bright harsh sunlight that you can work and play with that light and the shadows and such like that. And then you've got your golden hour, your evening, and that's where you get that romantic golden vibe.